I have Mayor Pro Tem and then Mr. Bakari.
You know, I think that we had the Intergovernmental Committee, we would discuss that, but here we are in February, and so prioritizing, that's when we had those discussions, was on the Intergovernmental Committee. And then once those initiatives were set for the agenda, both at the federal and state level, not a lot, we didn't do a whole lot more on that committee. So I just wonder if maybe there's an ad hoc opportunity to have the discussion on state and federal items that council members want to discuss or put forth. And then if the discussion is, you know, Mr. Fenton, you're explaining how the process works, that's fine, but we don't really have that opportunity to do that until we go to vote on it, which I think is leaving a gap a little bit. And then I'll also mention that we have, you know, we're paying lobbyists a lot of money to tell us what to do it and how to do it. And so that plays into it as well. If we really want to focus on transit, a transit plan, does that mean that we lay off a little bit on something else? I mean, that's sort of some of the advice that they give us, is it not? And is that?
That's advice I think might have been provided before.
Well, we used to hear it in the committee meetings.
Oh yeah, I think in the committee meetings, I believe that they may have said something like that before.
So I think what I'm hearing is we go up on March 11th or 12th?
2 weeks, the 13th and 14th of March.
I'm following up to the Mayor Pro Tem's statement that we need a discussion. Mr. Manager, we have a meeting on first Monday in March. We can talk about this some more. We can leave this and adopt it on that date. Mr. Bakari?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would just, as I'm learning this part of the process and how it works, it sounds to me like there's some very high-level, 5 in this case, statements of which there's a lot more detail later on. And I would encourage us maybe, rather than adopt it here, to have a little more impact and thought towards where we're deploying, you know, our resources and staff, our resources from lobbyists, because if you take off the 3 that were already in works and underway and we're just following up on them, the 2 that are left are infrastructure and affordable housing, which you've said are the monster ones that literally everybody is going after and there's not enough. So perhaps there's another one, and back to where I started in my, where I was a little off base, but we know cybersecurity is important, and we know tech, especially fintech, is important to our ecosystem. Maybe there's less people coming in and looking for, to the mayor's point, what they've got already that we can get in those spaces, and there's less competition and more relevance to us as a city and a region there. So I would encourage us to think about those things as we're deploying taxpayer-based resources in the forms of staff and lobbyists to go get these things, right?
So can I have a motion for deferral to the strategy session for discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll see you again then, Mr. Fenton. City Manager, do you have a report?
Yes, Mayor, members of council. I won't read the 30-day memo, but at each of your seats there's a 30-day memo for items that will be coming before you over the course of the next month. I would like to use the time for the manager's update to ask Assistant City Manager Kim Eagle, she's already gotten up there, great, to provide an update on the efforts around domestic violence, and also to provide an update for the next agenda item that you have, which is policing the ETJ, which I'd like to commend Kim for all of her hard work in both areas.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Eagle.
Good evening. Thank you, Manager. Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I'll do a brief update on the status of the domestic violence work, and then I'll move, depending on questions, into that next item. So the strategy group that we convened in late January met again last week. That was our second meeting. We have gone through and developed a list of action items that are short-term initiatives that we can achieve some accomplishments in an expedited fashion that we're working through. We're going to put together small groups to make that work go faster so that we make the best use of time for that large group. I'll give you a couple examples of the action items. We're working to finalize that list, and I'll share that with you when we have that finished in about a week. So I wanted to let you know that the clerk of Superior Court, excuse me, Elise Chingari has joined our group, and she spent some time talking with us last week about electronic filing for protective orders. So there are some opportunities there relative to implementation that we can expedite potentially. So we're having those conversations. The judges, as an example, are being trained on that this week. So we feel very confident that that will be one area of success. The next example that I'll give is something that's a collaboration between the City of Charlotte Corporate Communications and the county. We're going to do some work to put forward a social media campaign where we send out information on either a weekly or bi-weekly basis to update folks on educational topics and just different conversations going on in the community. This is an outgrowth of the feedback that we received at the town hall recently. So that's another example of an action item. We're also having some conversation around how we best engage the grassroots community. We know there are a lot of folks doing really good work in the community, so we're having conversation about that. We're talking about ways to engage the immigrant community, and then also working to get a survivor on our stakeholder group to have that perspective. We've had lots of conversation around how do we do this better while we're trying to go fast. So that's my update on the domestic violence work. We're very encouraged.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Siegel? Mr. Winston?
I just like to echo Mr. Jones's thanks to Ms. Eagle for all the hard work that you're doing in this realm. I know it's be difficult and taxing, but I'd like to thank you in general and specifically for your help in putting together the domestic violence town hall that we had on Valentine's Day. I think it was very well put together by many different parts of the staff, but it was obvious out there that we have a lot more work to do. So thank you. I look forward to continuing work on that.
Thank you, Mr. Winston. It's a privilege to get to work on this topic area, and Karen Witchard in the city manager's office is putting in a lot of time and effort on this as well. So I'd like to thank her too.
Thank you. So then you get to talk about another tough topic. Do you have any remarks,
That's it
Mr.
for me.
Jones? All right, Ms. Siegel?
Okay, I'll move on to an action item that you have listed on your business agenda. It's the next item up. So tonight, the action being requested by council is to adopt a resolution that ratifies the 2018 agreement for the continued consolidation of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. I'll go through a few points around the work that's gone on. To start with, I'll remind you that we talked about this at your January 22nd action review meeting, and I shared a bit then about the process. Since then, we've completed all of the negotiations for the agreement. So just a smidge of history. Back in 1993, the Charlotte Police Department and the Mecklenburg County Police Department were consolidated via an interlocal agreement. Then, 3 years later, in 1996, we added a funding mechanism so that we could charge for the CMPD services in the extraterritorial jurisdictions, or the ETJs, as we call them. That agreement that was put in place in 1996 was terminated by the county, effective June 30, 2018. So we've been working since we received that notification to put together a new agreement, and that's what you have in front of you tonight. The estimated revenues that we'll receive paid by the county for these services are approximately $14 million. That's the floor, if you will. The agreement does include adjustments for natural growth. An initial 5-year term is what's established in the agreement, and we are requiring a 23-month notice for termination, and that's an extension of what we had in the previous agreement. I'd also like to note that Mecklenburg County approved the agreement on Tuesday, February 20th, last week, and I'll take any questions.
Do we have questions? Thank you, Mr. Driggs.
I actually just had a short comment. In terms of background, the conversation came about largely because the tax rate that had to be levied in order to fund on the old terms of the old deal kept going up, and there was resistance to seeing that number increase. It was just a function of the formula we used. So now, in the new thing, the tax rate is held constant at a certain number. We protect ourselves against any decline by putting the $14 million floor in, and we are also protected against any increase in the value of the property at that given tax rate. So we will see growth in these revenues under normal circumstances, but we're not going to recompute the tax rate each time with the result, as has occurred in the past, that it keeps getting higher.
Thank you. So if there are no further comments or questions, do I have a motion to ratify
Second.
the 2018 agreement for continued consolidation of the Charlotte
That too.
Mecklenburg Police Department? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Anyone opposed, then I think we're okay and agreed. So the next item on the agenda.
Kim? No, thanks. Good job.
Thank you.
Kim?
The next item on our agenda is the Charlotte Gateway Station Project Agreements, authorizing the city manager to negotiate a construction agreement between the city, Norfolk Southern, and North Carolina DOT, and the Charlotte Gateway Station Project, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a maintenance agreement between the same parties of the city, Norfolk Southern, NCDOT for the project, and adopt a budget ordinance appropriating $30 million in federal railroad administration grant funds and $1,750,000 from the municipal debt service fund. Before we do this, I want to recognize all of the hard work of the staff and the team led by a number of great people, but the person that's here tonight, Mr. John Lewis, on opening of the Blue Line. Thank you very much. So let's take on another one. Lots to do. So, your work is never done. So, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Do I have comments or discussion? Mr. Driggs?
Yes, Madam Mayor. For one, I think one of the few things that's not controversial in Charlotte is the fact that we need a new train station, if you've seen the old one. I'm interested to know how the ownership structure will work, and I did raise this question before the meeting, but I'd like to clarify, if we're putting in CIP money and we get this federal grant, does the federal grant permit the asset in question to be owned by us? And how do you see this playing out, the governance, the ownership, and the control of the whole thing?
Sure, great question, Councilmember. John Lewis, Executive Director, Charlotte Area Transit System. What you are considering today is part of the Phase 1 infrastructure deals that we are trying to move forward. So as was outlined in the RCA, NCDOT and Norfolk Southern will be working on the construction of the bridge, the platforms, and the signals. Concurrent with that, we are working on the vertical development. And while, to your point, the city owns the property, but as we continue our discussions on developing a RFP or an RFQ to bring in a private developer to work with us on what that station and the attendant vertical development will be, we will then answer the questions on whether or not the city should continue to own it, if that's in the best interest of the city and the project, or would we convey, sell, or come up with some other agreement with that private sector developer. But the city does own that property, fee simple.
So if we did, that would mean that we would provide it to a new entity in the context of a larger transaction, and we would receive some sort of consideration?
That would be the model if we made that determination that we wanted to convey that. And so we're working through those issues right now. What is the best means of bringing on a private developer and what the structure of that entity will be.
Because you do have quite a large commercial interest on the side of the private developers. Is there any circumstance under which the city ends up not controlling its own train station?
Not one that I would recommend.
So that I just want to tell you, nor would I. And therefore, as this evolves, because I expect the next phase is going to involve large amounts of private investment, and it is a proper, true public-private partnership where we participate in the cost of something together to our mutual benefit, I just want to somehow include in that there is some body, majority appointed by us, or it is us, or whatever, that actually controls the train station. I think that should be a city resource.
Understood. And so as we continue to work through what that entity will look like, we'll certainly be back before the council to make those recommendations and get your feedback.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Eggleston?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A lot of times the work we do can seem kind of boring, but I could not be more excited about this project. At the risk of sounding like I'm also working for Denver, Colorado's Chamber of Commerce, this will be twice in a month. But the Union Station in downtown Denver, I had an opportunity to visit 2 years ago, and it has transformed a part of their downtown and really brought together all the modes of travel that they have. It's created new jobs. It's led to new development and investment. And it's the vision I have for the Gateway Station here in Charlotte. So thank you for the work you're doing on this, and I would encourage anybody who's watching tonight to look up the Union Station and picture what that could do for right there between 3rd and 4th Ward in Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Driggs?
If no one else has a question, I had one more. The bus service right now functions out of the transportation center. Now we're talking about creating this Gateway Station. How can we integrate those so that that we do have a network that doesn't involve a disconnect between those two places?
Absolutely, sir. So right now, as you all know, we're going through a redesign of our bus system, the Envision My Ride. Our goal in that is to not require so much of our service to end up in Uptown unless that is their final destination. And so we will have, I envision, a much smaller footprint in Uptown. We will divide that equally between the Charlotte Transit Center and have some bus connections at the Gateway Station. You remember that that those points are very strategically located, and both centers will be connected with the Gold Line. And so as the Gold Line extension continues to progress, it will have a stop at the Gateway Station. It currently stops at the Transit Center, and that also provides northwest connectivity to the Blue Line.
It is another leg of the journey, but I think what you're saying is that as far as buses are concerned, you're going to try and minimize the situation where somebody has to go all the way uptown and then leave again, taking 2 hours to get to their destination.
That is correct.
Thank you.
All right. Dr. Harlow?
Thank you. I have a question, but first I'll echo my colleagues' comments around how transformative this can be. I think it really is a commitment to how we want to invest in large-scale transit and help get people out of their cars and create some connectivity in this city. I also see it as a larger catalyst as we move west, west in Uptown, and then also think about what could be beyond. I have a question, and I'm not totally familiar with the Tiger grant. It's great, $30 million, fantastic. My question is about the terms. Are we under some type of clock or timeline as it relates to this? And if so, well, first let's answer that, because if no, then I don't have.
Yes, the Tiger, as a stipulation of getting these federal grants, there is a 2-year window, which for us, that clock ends this September, in which we have to encumber these funds.
So what's the stop point to say, hey, we have met the terms?
This agreement here.
Okay, just the agreement, not actually.
Yes, well, once we add that to the budget and begin to appropriate it, we can draw that money down with the FRA. We do have to sign some other agreements, both with Norfolk Southern and NCDOT, but this is an important step forward in that.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other, Mr. Winston? Okay, Mr. Winston?
Congratulations, Ms. Lewis, on the ride today. It was truly fantastic, and like you said, under that tent, it's back to work tomorrow. So I'm glad in the morning we were celebrating, and in the evening we're working. As my colleagues have stated, that this could be it will be an amazing infrastructure project in scope and faculty for the city. I just want to encourage you and the folks that make decisions on how we build this, that we're cognizant to include as many Charlotteans in building this fantastic structure and network as possible. And where we're not able to fill those positions constructing this, we should find ways that we can bridge that gap going forward in the project or future projects. So thank you.
Understood.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Of the four actions, that action including A, B, and C. Okay. Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda are the appointments. Tonight, council makes appointments to boards and commissions. You voted by ballot and submitted them to the clerk earlier this evening, and any nominee receiving 6 or more votes is automatically appointed. And I believe we have that in all the cases, so I'd like to have the clerk announce the results of our ballots.
Yes, ma'am. For Charlotte International Cabinet in the International Business category, Scott Chen received 1 vote and Vanessa Vaughn received 10 votes. Vanessa Vaughn is appointed.
Congratulations.
And in the Charlotte International Cabinet at Large category, Sven Gerser received 4 votes and Brooks Shelley received 7 votes. Brooks Shelley is appointed.
Congratulations.
For the Civil Service Board, Parker Keynes received 4 votes and Carolyn Millen received 7 votes. Carolyn Millen is appointed. And finally, for Historic Landmarks Commission, William Hughes received 7 votes. Edwin Wilson received 4 votes. William Hughes is appointed.
Okay, thank everyone for their participation, and we look forward to working with seeing all of you work on our committee and boards. With that, before we have a motion for closed session, I'd like to actually start on this side with Councilmember Mitchell for mayor and city council topics.
I don't have any. Let me say a thank you real quick, then 30 seconds, thank you. My wife and I hosted the Black History Quiz Bowl at West Charlotte with Project Lift middle school students and 2 other middle schools. I'd like to thank our mayor. Mayor was a great judge. She was there 3.5 hours, and she was a photo star. And then representative from District 2, Dr. Hollow, thank you for coming by and relieving me. And the representative from District 3, Ms. Mayfield, and to all the youth and parents who were there, thank you so much for participating in the Black History Quiz Bowl.
That's right, it was fun. Oh, we were really proud of our students. The questions were hard, too. So, Councilmember Ajmera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, community engagement, advocacy, and economic opportunities, these are the words that I often hear when I go out in the community. Well, you have an opportunity. There is a UNCC is having an activism fair on February 28th from 4 to 6 p.m. at their Student Activities Center. So for those of you who are interested in jobs, internships, networking, getting their voice heard, also getting more involved in the community, this is your chance. So come out and support these organizations and get more involved. Thank you. Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 things. 1, want to invite everyone to the first Housing and Neighborhood Development Committee meeting of the year, which will be held on this Wednesday, starting at 2 p.m. It will be in room 280 here at the Government Center. And also, Dr. Harlow and I had the opportunity this past Saturday evening to attend the Mel's Place. They had their annual gala fundraiser, but the organization has been around since the early 80s and specifically focuses on young African-American men. They are planning their 2nd trip to Ghana. Their first one, I believe, was back in 2010, where they're taking 20 young men, and I believe there's 5 chaperones. They are still fundraising for the event. I mention this because they are visiting our sister city, Kumasi. And this is going to be a great opportunity, not only for our young men, and especially those of us, even though Black Panther is a fictitious nation, the record sales tells us that what we need to see is more powerful, positive images on the big screen, because images and words have power. For these young men to have a chance to go to Ghana and to go to Kumasi is going to be an amazing experience. So anyone that would like to get more information, you can go to The Males Place, TheMalesPlace.org, to find out more information and to donate and or support. I do not normally promote any particular organization, but I am really proud of what these young men are doing, and they're doing a lot of work to get themselves to Ghana. And for them to have this experience, here's an opportunity for us to step up and support. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, I just want to just thank everyone for coming out today at the campus of UNC Charlotte for their launch of the light rail Blue Line extension from their campus coming uptown. We had like hundreds of people, a virtual potpourri of who's who in Charlotte. We had all of the...
You say
potpourri.
Potpourri?
I mean, it was great.
Okay.
A whole different thing.
You know, the former transit directors, Mr. Tober, Ms. Flowers, I mean, you know, David Howard, our own David Howard was there. So everybody enjoyed it. We had a nice lunch, and this was really a precursor to what's going to be happening on March 16th when the service initiation date commences for the Blue Line extension. So it was a great time, and I know a lot of you all were here, participated in it, and it was just great. So we're just looking forward to it. Everybody's excited about it, service delivery on March 16th. So thank you very much for attending.
Mr. Bakari?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I'll just use my couple seconds here to just reflect on, I think, what we all saw today with our brave men and women in uniform in CMPD coming out unified as a group, telling us their positive stories, but also their challenges right now. And just to reiterate the stats we heard, I mean, if this isn't top of our minds, nothing else should be with why we're here. You know, in 2017, we hired 114 new officers and we lost 120. And there was a net gain of 1 in 2016. We're looking at 2018 right now. We have 150 officer shortfall that we need to hire to be fully staffed, and 58 more are retiring this year. And then you look at the challenges we have of losing the police officers to Raleigh and Cary PD that have superior retirement health care. They have superior and higher top-end pay. This is a challenge that we need to address, and we need to address it head-on before we look at anything that is a nice-to-have. And if we're looking at the top topics that we talk about right now today, of upward mobility, affordable housing, gentrification, equity, all of those are part of a toolkit we need to solve those challenges, and you cannot solve a single one of them if our community members do not feel safe. And we have a challenge with retention and attraction of officers right now that could put that in jeopardy. So I hope we all take that to heart, the impressive show that we saw tonight, and make that on the forefront of our mind as we look to see what we can do. Thank you.
Mr. Newton?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to take a quick moment and congratulate Carolyn Millen on her appointment to the Civil Service Board. For anyone who doesn't know who Carolyn is, that's Carolyn right there. She has been with us since the dinner meeting tonight through the entire meeting. She is the former president of Eastway Sheffield, and I know is going to do a fantastic job on the board. Congratulations, Carolyn. There is a lot going on in District 5, which is East Charlotte, that I want to share with everybody. First and foremost, Charlotte East, that's the Eastland Area Strategies team, will be having a meet and greet on Thursday, March the 1st at 6 o'clock at Queen Sheba Restaurant. That's 4808 Central Avenue. I want to thank Maureen Jalewski and all of the wonderful folks at Charlotte East for putting that together. I will be there, and I look forward to seeing everyone else there. There will also be a tree day. It's being called Monroescape. Being held by Tree Charlotte and a number of East Charlotte communities that are partnering with Tree Charlotte. Communities like McClintock Woods, East Forest, Oakhurst, Burtonwood, and Woodbury Forest. That is going to be at East Baptist Church, 6850 Monroe Road, this Saturday, March the 3rd, from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. You can come out to this event. The point of this is to promote tree canopy within our city, so you can come out to this event and get 3 trees that you can take home with you. There will be an arborist there as well that will give you instructions on how to plant those trees and take care of them. And one last thing that I am so very excited about. This is something that was included in our very own city manager's budget report. If you remember, he was talking about creating Charlotte's workforce pipeline for the future. And there is an aviation institute, American Institute of Maintenance. They are the largest aviation maintenance institute in the world, and they will actually be coming here to Charlotte proper, but more specifically East Charlotte on the Independence Boulevard corridor. I'm so excited and want to thank our city manager for his hard work on that initiative, Joel English with AIM and the whole AIM team. They've been a great community partner from the very start. There will be 2 Charlotte area scholarships associated with this, and we're going to be reaching out and working with East Mecklenburg High School and Independence High School too, to partner and create maybe some programs that the AIM can champion for our local students. So I am so very excited that they will be here. They will be starting in fall of 2018 is when classes will start, and I'm excited to see this partnership. I'm excited to see it take off. That was a pun.
Got it.
Been here all night.
I'm sorry, Mr. Eagleston.
Try the veal.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to echo what Councilmember Phipps mentioned, how excited I was to be part of the Blue Line Extension ribbon cutting today. And I think that when you saw who was in the crowd, the intergenerational leadership that was in that crowd today, it kind of gives some gravity to the work that goes into a project that big and that impactful in our community. So to all of the staff members, to all the elected officials, to all of the folks from UNC Charlotte, thank you to everybody over the last however many decades at this point. Dr. Harlow has given me to show. Go 49ers. Thank you to everybody who was involved in that. It is a project I'm really excited about. I think it's going to be transformational for our city, but it was done by a lot of people. So many hands make light work. So thank you to the many hands that were involved. Also want to welcome to our city the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association, who kicked off the CIAA tournament today. My history with the CIAA goes back further than you probably suppose. I ball boyed the CIAA when I was a young child in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, back when it was held there, and have loved partaking in a lot of the tournament and events around the tournament for now 2 decades. So welcome to them, and good luck on a successful tournament this week. And finally, in less than 2 days, filing will have closed for this year's election. And I just want to thank everybody who has offered their services to our city, county, state, or nation by filing and offering themselves as a public servant. I think everyone around here will agree this work is difficult, and the work that you've signed up for is difficult, but that it's very rewarding and it's very worthwhile. So to anybody who's willing to do it at any level, I appreciate you and I applaud you. And if you're still thinking about it, you got 2 days left. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Dr. Harlow?
Yeah, what a weekend it was. You heard my colleagues mention the Black History Quiz Bowl and the Mel's Place fundraising gala to send 20 young black boys to Ghana. Definitely encourage you to visit themelsplace.org and donate if you can to support that. One event that is missing, so I'll mention it. We had a great time, and kudos to, I guess Pam Weidman left already, but Housing and Neighborhood Services and all the staff that put on the neighborhood board retreat this weekend. There were staff from the manager's office, from community relations, from Housing and Neighborhood Services. We had 15 really great neighborhoods come and participate and commit 6 hours on their Saturday, in addition to staff committing time to help facilitate, outlining some strategic priorities for our neighborhoods. I'm proud to highlight 5 neighborhoods from District 2. That was the most out of any district, so very, very proud to highlight the Brookfield Neighborhood Association, Thomasboro Neighborhood Association, the Middleville Smallwood Community Organization, the Lakewood Neighborhood Alliance, and the Peachtree Hills Neighborhood Association. Thank you all for the work that you do, all the neighborhoods and HOAs out there for the work you do to help make our city great. Outside of that, everyone be safe during CIAA weekend. A lot of other events as well, the events surrounding the homegoing for Billy Graham as well, so some traffic to probably be involved, so just stay safe out here on the streets.
Mr. Driggs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank all the members of staff who participated in the Valentine Breakfast Club event on Saturday this week about issues and answers. It was a big success. Congratulations also to Victoria Nwasike, Tim Morgan, and founder Ray Eschert of the Breakfast Club. Public safety, planning, the sheriff's office, representatives from the General Assembly. This is really a one-stop shop for citizens to be able to come and interact with their representatives in government, with the staff. It's a great event, but it does also represent a big investment on the part of the participating staff, coming all the way down there and then being present. So I want you to know we really appreciate that. And the second thing I wanted to do was specifically acknowledge, in conjunction with the Blue Line event today, the accomplishments of my personal friend, Chancellor Phil Dubois. He has been a driving force behind the Blue Line, the Uptown campus, the football program, and if you've observed the progress of UNCC under his leadership, it is really remarkable. So I think we all owe him an individual debt in conjunction with, of course, the achievements of everybody else who participated in those. And so I just want to say personally, Phil, thank you very much.
Mr. Winston?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Two things I want to talk about. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge a city employee that we lost this weekend. Ramona Brandt passed away suddenly, and for those of you that don't know her, I just met her a month or two ago, and we were very excited about the work that we needed to do in this city. Ramona was a victim of domestic violence. She was a survivor. And through that experience, she did some things that she found herself incarcerated. She served 21 years out of a 50-year sentence, I do believe, for a nonviolent drug offense. She would have stayed there. She would have been there today, was it not for President Barack Obama, who offered her clemency. And she was an employee in our Human Resources Department. We just spoke 2 weeks ago at my virtual town hall, where she was a guest, about continuing to do the work. Karen and Kim and I just finished meeting last Thursday, talking about how she was going to be the subject of our next virtual town hall to tell her story. She was a tireless advocate for criminal justice reform and reintroduction of those convicted of felonies back into our society. And this is something that we've talked about as a council, specifically around getting them into housing and jobs. I just sat on a panel with her 3 weeks ago at Warehouse 242, where we were able to share a lot. And so I just ask if we could just give a moment of silence to this giant that we had in our ranks, and I hope one day we can honor her in a proper fashion. Thank you. I do have one more thing I wanted to speak about, and it's another sobering topic. 2 weeks ago, Mayor Pro Tem, in her invocation last week, mentioned the events in Parkland, Parkland, Florida, where 17 people were murdered in a school shooting. And since then, of course, it has been on the front of mind of everybody, and everybody is calling for a lot, and something needs to happen. I shared a video on Facebook of the scene that was in the high school, and people had different opinions of it. I never saw bodies in my school, but I grew up seeing bodies on the street. I grew up seeing people carried around out of shootouts and, you know, seeing bodies on the ground walking home from school. Those things never got reported. Nobody would believe me or the other people around me if they didn't see it. We have to see these things because as we see now, once you see it, you're compelled to act. But, you know, find myself very ashamed at times, you know, from our elected leaders, to be completely honest, who continue to cop out and not offer real solutions, and particularly on the state and federal level. And, you know, it's up to us folks on municipal, local, and city levels often to answer directly to our constituents who have very legitimate gripes and requests of those that are supposed to lead in this great experiment. You know, we were supposed to vote on a contract today that would have approved spending of over $1 million to give our firefighters ballistic gear, bulletproof vests, Kevlar-type helmets, and well, thank you, state and federal officials, for giving us the only option is to protect our firefighters from going into active shooter situations. So that's what the reasoning that was cited on this contract. Because these events have increased so much from 2009, we are thinking of putting bulletproof vests on our firefighters. I think we're better than that. You know, one of the big things that we said on the streets in September 2016, if you come equipped for a riot, you're going to get a riot. Well, if we continue to equip ourselves with weapons of war in our homes, in our schools, in our workplaces, we're going to get wars in our homes, in our schools, in our workplaces. We have to do something. So I implore my colleagues to find ways. I know this is not under our purview, but we have to find ways to answer to the citizens that depend on us, because our colleagues in the state houses and on Capitol Hill will not do that for us. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A lot of my council members have reiterated what the events that have taken place. It's been a busy week. The Blue Line experience today was really incredible, not only just to see how our city is growing and growing around the Blue Line, but also for as we've said, the people that were there today. I think we had 5 mayors, going back to Mayor Myrick, Sue Myrick, who was there. But what I really was taken by was, you know, how far back and how bipartisan this effort has been to get this Blue Line together. And I encourage my colleagues and our staff to really look at the opportunity that gives us. And I hope that we're as thoughtful as we can possibly be with what we build around that rail line. And are we really planning for the future? We talk a lot about buying, putting money into affordable housing, but are we buying land in that area that we can reserve for density for affordable housing? So I hope that we've made that investment. We'll continue to invest near it and make the most of the investment that we've made. So that's one thing. I also wanted to just comment on Ramona Brandt. I met Ramona a few months ago at the RMJJ. Well, I met her before that, but I heard her speak at the RMJJ conference for Race Matters for Juvenile Justice, and I thought she was a national speaker. I had no idea she was an employee of the city of Charlotte. And I had met her once before, but didn't realize who she was and what her story was. I don't know if there's video from the RMJJ conference, but if there is, I hope it's on YouTube, and I hope people have the opportunity to hear about this woman, because she was really an incredible woman, and I think that God released her from prison and gave us an angel for a little bit of time. So may she rest in peace.
I tell you, it's always tough when you lose someone that's so close to you. And I remember when Ramona was given her clemency because she walked with a good friend of mine who was also in that same situation out that day, and it's really, really something when Kimba Smith was in that same situation. Again, another person with connections to Charlotte had gone to Johnson C. Smith, and both of them walked out of 50-year sentences after a number of years, and imagine. So I want to also follow up to Councilmember Winston. There is a Facebook page for Charlotte March for Our Lives, which will be held on March 24th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. They have applied for their permit. They are working with our police department and getting all of those things ironed out, and it is student-led. It is students from our community that are stepping up to join, and with the Parkland and the other students that will be across this country working to change the situation that we have with all of this violence. So I'm really glad to see and hope that many of us will have an opportunity to participate with high school students that are doing this work, because they so much have passion about the loss of life that's taking place unnecessarily. I think they are the next generation of change, and they're making a difference. A few other things that I'd like to just let you know, they're ongoing. We have the Republican convention application going pretty smoothly. I want to thank Ed. I also want to thank Carol Jennings, who's come back and who's working on this, and Senator Tillis's staff, Ted Lehman especially. A lot of good work going into that, and we're proceeding in that direction. I also want to point out the manager gave us a memo that's at our places, and it talks about the March 5th strategy session. And it has the agenda on it, and it has committee chair report outs as the first item on the agenda. And so far, I know transportation, environment, community safety, and housing and neighborhood development would have met, I think, by this meeting. Is there someone that, anyone that's missing in that? Just to make sure that we're ready and that we can talk about the things that have been referred out from ED as already met. Let's get those out, and let's make sure everyone in our council is informed about what's going on in committee. There are several agenda items tonight that probably didn't happen very well because we weren't all informed, and this is the opportunity, again, to make sure that all of us hear the message and have the chance to share our comments and questions together. There's also going to be a presentation on the UDO, and that we have referred to transportation and planning as a process. Originally, I thought we were further along, but now that our planning director has said there's a reassessment, we're going to reevaluate, I think it's appropriate that we put it in that committee. We've added the federal legislative packet, so please see Dana if you've got questions about how, why. I know that you've had a chance to meet with the staff of Holland and Knight today. If not, please make sure you touch bases with Dana so that there's an opportunity to address some of those issues that you may have, or questions about how we do it, why we do it. And I have to say, my apologies, because sometimes I forget that several of us have done this many, many times, and we just keep on rolling, and we're going to pause and let this happen so that everybody can have equal participation, and that's what we need to continue to focus on. I also want to make you aware that there is an association called the Metro Mayors Association. It is started as a transportation for the urban centers in our city, but it's kind of continuing to morph into metropolitan areas so that we can serve the regions around the metropolitan areas. But I'm not really sure how it works, and I'm going to be working with Esther Meisenheimer in Asheville and a number of people on that board to figure out how it works and how it fits with our efforts of what we're doing in Charlotte to make sure that we're effective working with our state legislators, because that is the focus of their group as well. We had a meeting with the African and Caribbean group, and they've asked us to look at the sister city process for Kumasi. And it's not just Kumasi, it is that We've not done a lot of work. We had the China trip last year, but many of you on the second floor will see those displays, and they are saying, well, are we really in this or not? Now, the good thing is this is not a 30, 60, or 90-day project. It usually takes over a year to reestablish these relationships. But I want to thank the office that we're working with Frederico and Emily together to start talking about how we do this and do it in a way that works for us. So that's great. And then the final thing, I want to recognize Councilmember Mitchell, who gathered together several of our leading economic development thinkers after we had a meeting with the Deputy Commerce Secretary, who came down and said, you guys need to come to Raleigh and have a meeting, and we did that on Monday. And now it feels like a month ago. But we went in and the Secretary gave us over an hour, the Deputy Secretary. We met their legislative person, their rural community person, their workforce development person. It was a very productive meeting for us. We talked about how we can work with both the governor's office, the department, what's going on in the legislature, which is something that maybe we'll be playing some defense on versus offense. But those relationships continue to grow, and as I said, with ED going up and having a focus and knowing specifically around some of that, I think that that might be one way, once we decide what we're working on, to be able to do more outreach and have deeper relationships inside both the governor's office and administration as well as the state legislature. But think about it, let it mull it over, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then finally, I want to thank Laura McCletty's little granddaughter, who is at Irwin Avenue, and she acted out the role of Mayor Vi Lyles. I noticed that she had on pearls, a blazer, and a blonde wig. So I mean, really, you have to see these pictures. They're absolutely adorable. But if anybody talks about the public schools in this city, they should have been there. These were kindergarten students that were assigned to act out a role, and they said clearly who they were, what they were doing. They talked about something and captured something from each individual. Mayor Gann and I had the opportunity to be there. The parents filled the room, and the creativity of a teacher working with nothing. You should have seen the props. I mean, Aretha Franklin had on a, I don't know what that was really, but there were doctors playing these roles, and there were people, Muhammad Ali, and these were children of all races and ethnicities, learning about African American people that were significant in the history of our country. So to the staff and principal, when they sang Lift Every Voice and sang, I cried. It was that well done. So thanks to our school system. We've got a lot to do, but sometimes we really have to appreciate what's going on. So I don't know if you young people out there are here because you're required. I expect so. But thank you, because you are going to make a difference. So thanks, everyone. Now I'd like to have a motion that we go into closed session pursuant.
Second.
She has to read all of it.
You gotta read the whole thing.
Gotta read it.
Thank y'all. All right, pursuant to GS 143-318.11A4, to discuss matters relating to the location of industries or businesses in the city of Charlotte, including potential economic development incentives that may be offered in negotiations, and GS 143-318-11A3, to consult with attorneys employed or retained by the city in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege, and to consider and give instructions to the attorneys concerning the handling or settlement of a claim, and the John D. Posh, did I say that correctly, Mr. Hageman? Versus City of Charlotte, 14 CVS 238115. And I'm going to assume that we will adjourn after the closed session with a formal motion. One person will come out here and adjourn the meeting. So we have no further business. A motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Good night.